we've been in banking. One thing that when you're in banking, you get to know is that the people with the most money move in silence.
You don't see them.
You don't see them. Or it could be the guy, like standing right behind you in a grocery store.
I saw somebody say that money isn't loud.
Yes. People try to guilt trip you at huyo hapo, or he's a stingy guy. Why is he stingy? Because he refused to buy you a drink that's $115. Call me stingy. Yeah.
And I know he drives what's that motor called, the Range Rover that starts with the A, Mika, ile Range.
Vela. Ile ndogo ile inakuwa na engine ya Ford.
Hapana, wacha hiyo ile range nyingine ile waga ya moto.
Yeah.
Ama tuseme Brobus. Mtu ako na Brobus lakini hawezi kukubaya drink ya so moja.
Mtu anaendesha nini inaitwa ngaji? Unasema Overfinch.
Hata hiyo.
Si Brabus ya range ni Overfinch.
Yes.
So the point is
we have floated, but
so I think the point is if you start teaching because kids, very interesting thing about 6 kids pick up things that you do.
Yeah, they need to know
things that you do.
The piggyback, the savings account,
so I think things. So I think, and none of us is perfect. We all have, like our weaknesses. But I think, like when you're trying to train your child, think about this way. As a trainer, your kid will mostly pick up not necessarily what you say, but what you do. So if you have those things that have not worked so well for you that you've been doing, try to do them in a way that your kids are not seeing. Na si ati unajificha, you're just trying to give them a better shot.
Let's look at things, right? When the economy is contracting, as you said, we reduce interest rates, so we need people to spend more money, right? So I will reduce your mortgage rates.
How does reducing interest rates make people spend more money?
The biggest one that actually, and that's a great question, the biggest one is short-term capital. So think about, like, when it comes to businesses, lines of credit.
Yes.
And a line of credit is like a credit card. Right, but somebody is controlling how you spend your money, right? You have to tell me what you're spending your money on and how you're going to spend it and how you're going to repay me back, right? Short-term capital. That's actually how economies grow, right? So right before Donald Trump decided with this tariff, Jerome, our guy, even though he's not black, Jerome was on his way.
So you're talking about the Fed chair, Jerome Powell.
The Fed chair, Jerome. Oh, sorry, I have to go. My apologies. So Jerome Powell was about to cut rates, right? Give us down so that he can boost the economy. The business owners. If I'm right now,
get money flowing.
Yeah, get money flowing, and interest rates right now at 7.5%. That's prime, right? Prime, I think, is at 7.5. So if I cut it down, your cost of living and your cost of product goes down, so then you can spend more. You can
buy more.
You can buy more.
Yeah.
Right? That's zero.
Okay.
Right? And then tariffs is everything that comes in from abroad. Right? Now the problem that becomes is tariffs and reducing interest rates don't work together.
Yeah.
Somebody has to win. Right? Somebody has to win. If both of them
you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
That's what you said. Correct. You cannot have that. So what does that do? So when it comes in inflation, when you have inflation, you increase taxes. So you can mitigate what's going to happen. And what is inflation? Eggs should not cost $8.99. It should be at $4.99. Inflation, right?
So now you have to eat fewer eggs.
Allegedly.
You now have to eat fewer eggs.
Correct.
And products that use eggs, like cake and
everything.
Many other, the prices go up.
They go up.
Yeah, so now you can no longer eat cake.
You can no longer
you
eat
have to
cake.
eat bread.
Allegedly.
And then
you can't even have bread because bread needs an egg.
Yes.
It needs an egg.
You can't.
Correct. So you can't even have it. So these are the issues.
And then Omosh can only just buy one egg.
Wow.
Right.
Not 3.
Yeah.
1.
And things, because I took notes on my little thing, and it's like, so when you listen to DJT, He goes, I'm trying to help the economy. Well, small towns are the ones that are being impacted today. Small towns, small communities, right? Things where little things happen, manufacturing. My pen was probably manufactured somewhere in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Or China.
Let's go with Biloxi,
Okay, so
Mississippi.
Biloxi,
Yeah.
Mississippi, sorry.
Right? But then that economy get hurt because
Yes.
now somebody can't do it, right? Small communities. And what does that mean? Let's put tariffs. So DC, let's put the market that we are in today.
Yeah.
Right? I live in the DMV area, right? You lay off 80,000 people, 10,000 in the DMV.
Yes.
That means that 10,000 people who ain't paying mortgages, that's 10,000 people who are not paying rent, that 10,000 people are not going to shop, that's 10,000 people, and
They're not buying lunch.
They're not buying lunch.
Yeah.
They're not buying drinks. So when you look the trickle down effect that like Ronald Reagan used to say, this is a different aspect. That's 10. That multiplier is extremely wide, right? I am not going to go to see Omosh because, man, the cost of gas just went from $3.19 to $5.99. Bruh, this party isn't that serious. And I'm just using it as an example. But, these are the economic impacts of these tariffs. And put things together. A t-shirt for your kid used to be $1.99, now it's $5.99. And it has Superman on the chest. Made in China.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So
Right?
that's
Now
Or
$1.99.
MAGA.
Oh my God,
yeah.
Tennessee. But those are the economic impacts.
Okay. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are now coming to terms. One thing I appreciate that happens during Trump presidencies is that people are forced to go back to factory settings and read the law, read what these things mean, because I think people have been very comfortable, like with previous presidents, like with Obama or with Biden, you would find people nitpicking, like certain small things here and there they're doing, but now they're seeing the after effects of what you call very destructive leadership, because this has been a very short period of time, and they've just been blowing things apart, like day by day, and it's like there's something always they have every other day. And then I think there's a comment coming in from Skylar says, unfortunately, IULs are being pushed aggressively with a grow rich like Ponzi scheme of if you get more people involved, you get promoted to different levels. Yes, that's another thing I did not want to mention. Any business where, like the earnings is based on the number of people you recruit, it's called multi-level marketing.
It's pyramidal.
Yeah, then that in itself
That reminds me of many companies.
No, I did not want to mention that, but I will blame Skylar. Skylar is the one who mentioned that. And then Patrick says, all in all, whether whole term life or IUL, the insurance companies will always look for a loophole for not reimbursing you if you die. Just drop whole life and UIL and take realistic term life. It's prudent to have insurance, but don't be very comfortable just because you have it. And then Esther Mulusa says, how do Africans spend more when they have no bargaining power because of economic occupation by big corporations? Why not show the connection between trade and microeconomics? Doesn't the rest of the world matter? The US can do all these good things because they buy cheap raw materials and sell the value-added products to the same poor countries that provide the raw materials. Now, onto what Esther is saying, I think, people also do not necessarily have an understanding of how much I can afford. This is how much I make, and this is what I can afford. I think people don't have an appreciation and a good understanding of that. It's kind of like, if I have the money, let me spend it. One piece of advice that I can give to especially people in their 20s who are maybe in college or just graduating college, one of the best things you can do for yourselves, if any of you is tuned, if any of you has a son, a daughter, or a nephew, a niece, or a sibling, they know, advise them not to leave their parents' home. That is one of that is one of the best pieces of. Do not leave your parents home.
So
Yes, and I know right now we are gonna think of ourselves when we were in our 20s, when you could rent a place for 300, 400.
yeah,
That's not the case
They
right
don't
now.
Yeah, you're starting at.
That's not the case right now.
1,500
Because I have a niece, who is paying, I think, almost $2,000
Yes.
for a very small 1-bedroom apartment in Silver Spring. And I'm like, wow, and she's just getting started.
But they have a
Yeah.
concierge.
Yeah, and she's just getting started. So now, if you can take whatever you're making your first 5 years and aggressively invest, stay in your parents' home, aggressively start investing, maybe let's say you have a fast job, maybe they're paying you 80K. Live frugally, you're still living in your parents' home, aggressively save $60,000 every year. You will be in a very good position within a very short period of less than 10 years. You'll be in a very good position that you will not even imagine. You will be ahead of some people who are almost retiring. There are people who are almost retiring, and their 401ks have not even hit
Right.
$100,000.
So
Believe it or not.
so
I
the-
think you know this
No,
better than most people.
I agree with you.
Yes.
1,000%. But the way I look at it, especially kids who are growing up in America, and the A is silent. When you're 22 in America, the last thing you're thinking about is retirement.
Correct.
True. Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the last thing I'm thinking about. And I'll speak about myself. Graduated college here. Last thing I was thinking about is retirement. Today, 20 years later, or 25 years later, now I'm like, oh my God, I should have done this.
Yeah.
But the 18-year-old daughter or the 18-year-old son is not hearing what you're saying, right? And the hardest thing, because you've hit every point, that's what we should have done when we were 18 to 22.
But you know why they do not hear what you're saying? And this is experience that I've had, within my own extended family, from the group that did not hear and a group that heard. So I have a formula, if you want your 21-year-old to hear what you're saying. And the formula is, don't start them telling when they're turning 20 or 21. You've already lost them. They're gone. Imeenda. Hiyo imeenda. Imeenda. Kabisa. Yeah.
Hii imeenda.
Yes.
Hii imeenda
But then-
kabisa.
But then, if you start teaching them from an early age, and an early age is when they can speak. There's tactics you can use, on a 5-year-old. There's tactics on an 8-year-old, and there's a lot of resources nowadays online. Yeah, if you start from the beginning, if you start from there, then by that time, they will be the one who will be. They're the one who will be telling you.
Just log in and see.
No, please.
You
mute
remember the
Mika.
password, right?
Mute Mika.
Mika, wewe.
No, mute. Just mute him because we can't.
Okay,
yeah.
sawa, endelea.
Yeah, because it's getting destructive. So
But
yeah. So what was I saying? When you start at age, when you start after high school, that is too late. That's why they're not listening. Now, for those
when you don't discuss this on the whole
for those who we've coached from an early age, they're the ones who are telling us that, I picked this account, I picked Vanguard over Fidelity because of this. So and you see with the people who came with parents here, they didn't know what they didn't know, but parents of today, they know this. So one of the best things that you can do for yourself as a 22-year-old, and even when you start telling your 22-year-old when they're 22 ati usitoke nyumbani, you're already late because they're already being influenced by Heather and Amber and Jake. They're already influencing them.
Wait, why they gotta be Heather and Amber?
And just random names, random names, yeah. And these are people who have trust funds. These are people who have generational wealth.
Yeah.
These are people who are encouraging them to move. Yet you're a first generation family where your family is still struggling, and now you want to do what Jake, Heather, and Amber are doing. You also have to give your kids the reality.
Very true.
This is our situation. We are not Jake, we are not Heather, and we are not Amber. Yeah, this is our situation. And if you start from a very early stage, they will understand. And even when they stay home, you make them have an understanding. You're only staying home, you know, like if you promise that this money, if there's proof that this money is actually being invested, and you're not just, you know, like blowing away this money.
And you know, just to add on to what you're saying, so I remember my college friends, my white college friends.
Yes,
right?
Jake,
Heather,
and Amber.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jake lived until he was 30 at
And
home.
Jason.
Yeah. Look at
Okay.
that. Look at
Right?
that. Yeah.
But us, we
Yeah.
were kicked out at 22, 23.
If you're lucky.
If
at
you're
22,
lucky,
no,
you-
Were we kicked out or we chose to move out?
No, we got kicked out.
you are kicked. Oh, okay, Mika. There's different situations. I think
There's a difference because the
Maura
thing is this. Let's look at it this way. Also, our behavior is what made us get kicked out.
Tabia mbaya.
So
yes.
we decided to choose behaviors that will make us. We decided to act grown up, and that is why we're told
I'm not
go
gonna
be a grown-up
validate
somewhere.
that, but I understand exactly what you're saying.
Because you can't go to your dad's home
But-
like anytime you want.
But
you
they're
know,
different
and that's
trains.
what
They're
they
different.
wanted.
You know, they're
Correct.
different trains. You see, like Maura was here with his parents,
Yeah.
and a lot of us didn't come here with our parents or not here with our parents. So it's
That's
like,
different,
So
yeah.
you basically you already out.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So you didn't have that that parental figure and all of that. But now
Yes.
our kids
100.
here have that, and this is our opportunity to shape it for them. And because we already see where this
And
path,
then-
where this path is going.
Correct. And you know what?
So,
in
hold
terms
on
of
one
what
minute.
you were saying,
Let me add on to something that Ali said. They had a thought process that, and it was disappearing, right? The thing is this: most parents might not actually think it through, but it's cheaper for you if that kid stays in your house than it is cheaper if they moved out. Yes, they will get a job, they will pay rent, but you know, when they come back for you, it's to you to ask for help. It's not going to be for $500, $100,
Nope.
$200.
No.
It's going to be huge money,
Yeah.
right? They've decided to move out. Yes, you go visit them. You look at how they're living, and you're like, you don't have a couch. This is how you're living. All right, I'm gonna get you that couch.
Yep.
That's $5,000. Boom.
Yep.
Gone. Right.
Yep. Mhm.
and also something that's very different, like growing up in America. Sorry to cut you off, Mika. Growing up in America and then growing up in Kenya. When I went to high school, even middle school, I came home every day. Versus when you're in Kenya, you go to boarding school,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? So there's a different
There's a
aspect
difference,
in
yeah.
how you look at things. And now
Were you in boarding in Kenya before you went to before you came to States?
Professor Son?
Were you in day school or
No,
boarding school?
day school.
Okay, that's a big difference.
Yes, but I think Mika brings
Because-
these points that sometimes we don't see. You know, like first of all, as a parent, if you're looking to help your child, especially in this kind of economy that we're living today, you know, things were easier when we were in our early 20s.
It sure
Things
was.
were much
It
easier.
sure was.
Yeah, things you could work, you know, like a minimum wage job and still
And
afford.
still be able to afford an apartment by
Yes,
yourself
by
without
yourself.
a roommate
Without a
and worrying
roommate.
about those crazy insurance rates.
that
of-
is-
and you know
That is no longer the case. You know, like there's a 2-bedroom apartment that I used to live in before I bought my current home. And believe it or not, that 2-bedroom apartment, and they're not very far from each other, they're like 6-7 minutes from each other. That 2-bedroom apartment now costs way more than
your
what
mortgage.
I'm paying for my townhome. You know, and this was 2018. 2018 is when I bought a home, and now it's costing. Now I'm like, if I'd stayed in that apartment, I would have been paying more for a 2-bedroom apartment than what I'm paying for a mortgage. So there's certain fundamentals that have significantly shifted in this US economy,
Yes,
and we
economically,
have
yes.
to be realistic about it. This thing of ati, oh, my son has graduated, wacha ende akajifundishe, you're sending him to the wolves. And even
Hiyo-
worse,
hiyo
a
na
daughter.
nini ati sasa nataka wajukuu endo nizalie.
You know,
You do not know how far back you're setting those kids.
by the way, hata hiyo story ya nendo kanizalie, I think if they're doing it in a legit way, meaning they're getting married at a young age, I think parents should be comfortable to support young couples. If it's a couple, you know, that's maybe like 25, I'm not going to discourage people to get married young because the shenanigans that used to happen when we were in our 20s, I think it might even be worse right now. But if a couple decides to get married young, I think parents on both sides wanafaa wakae pamoja, wajue vile watawasaidia. The village should come in.
But
Yes.
I'll say this. For you to successfully engage what you're talking about,
Yes.
like Moore has said,
Yeah.
these things need to be executed when you need to start planting those seeds when these children
Are young.
young.
Yes.
When they are 4, 5, 6. I'm not saying that you're prepping them for marriage or whatever, no, but you're just prepping them for life.
You're prepping them for life, yes.
And I say life, simple things, like nguo, kufua nguo, panga,
Or
make
even
breakfast, spending,
Yeah.
vitu ka hizo.
Yeah.
My own daughter one day came and told me, I want to talk to Uncle Ali. What did she
Yeah.
tell you about?
Yeah. She was asking me about stocks.
Exactly.
Yeah. She
So,
was asking at
and
a
how
very
old
young
is she?
age.
12.
12 years old.
She was
13.
asking. She
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
ask about IUN.
No. She wanted to talk to Uncle Ali.
Yeah. And you see,
So
it's
those-
very important when they start at that age.
And these are things that as parents you instill. What we're talking about right now here is what you instill. You instill in them young. You instill, these are the fundamentals of life. If you're whatever you are, at one point probably you will want to cook for yourself. You have to cook for yourself.
Yes.
You have to shop for yourself. You have to know what you want. You have to understand kama ni flavor yako ya nguo. You have to
And to
understand to budget, like whatever, like understand. You don't have to go and buy a $7,000 watch.
Yeah.
When you live in a $200 apartment.
And it's
like,
very simple.
unaget.
When you go, if you have a child, do this experiment. Sometimes you may go out shopping and you tell them pick whatever they want. Do this experiment. Tell them you have these $30 and this is all you can spend. The things they would pick are very different from what they would pick when they
If
know
you're
that
paying
will
for it.
swipe.
And
Very
you
different.
bring in a
for it.
very
Yes.
you bring in a very strong point, Ali, because one thing that most parents don't realize, and unfortunately it comes, especially parents my age, like most of my friends, most of me and my friends right now, we have
What are you
kids
trying to
who
say
are
about us?
between preteens to teenagers, like older kids, and you always want to provide everything for your life. You want your kid to have a soft life. You're buying them stuff, and you find people actually say that if I'm wearing Louis Vuitton, my kid is gonna wear Louis Vuitton. If I'm gonna do this, my kid is gonna do this. But then what you don't realize is that you are earning money and you're teaching somebody opulence from a young age.
Yes.
And the moment they start earning money themselves, they realize that you have an advantage over them because you've been working for more than 20 years. You build that nest. You have that financial capability that they never have. And you might have taught them all good money habits well, but you taught them opulence.
Yes.
You taught them that in life, unafaa kuvaa hivi na hivi kutumia hizi vitu. These are the things I'm doing.
Yes.
And guess what you've created? You've created a person
monster.
who doesn't know how to budget. A spendthrift, atakuwa na waste pesa, hatakuwa na kitu yote. So I usually try to tell people who we are parenting together at this particular moment together. It's like once in a while you can throw in an expensive gift, but teach them living within your means is not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, and it's very. You remember
It's
eating
very,
life
very crucial and
in
important.
this age of social media. You remember eating life with a big spoon.
Because of social
Soft
media.
life.
Yeah, because you see what happens is that there's certain things, certain aspects that are amplified about the lives of certain people, and they post that on social media continuously, and you tend to think that this is how they're living. Now, here's the interesting thing. I mean, we've been in banking. One thing that when you're in banking, you get to know is that the people with the most money move in silence.
You don't see them.
You don't see them. Or it could be the guy, like standing right behind you in a grocery store.
I saw somebody say that money isn't loud.
Yes, like
That's a true story.
you don't see them. Like you will not know. It's not like they don't have like certain extravagances on the side, but people with big money, you know, like people who are gonna go and get into a deal worth $50 million, $100 million, just like
silence.
that. They move in silence. That's one thing that people need to understand. All this loudness of, oh, go spend this money, and this is something that mostly affects people within the black community. I see Africans with a lot of it too. And then people try to guilt trip you at huyo hapo, or he's a stingy guy. Why is he stingy? Because he refused to buy you a drink that's $115. Call me stingy. Yeah.
And I know he drives what's that motor called, the Range Rover that starts with a A, Mika, ile Range.
Vela ile ndogo ile inakuanga na engine ya Ford.
Hapana, wacha hiyo, ile Range ingine ile waga ya moto.
Yeah.
Ama tuseme Brobus. Mtu akona Brobus lakini hawezi kukubaya drink ya so moja.
Mtu anaendesha nini inaitwanga? Unasema Overfinch.
Hata hiyo.
Si Brabus ya engine ya Overfinch.
Yes.
So the point is
we have floated, but
so I think the point is, if you start teaching, because kids, very interesting
At
thing
5,
about
6.
kids pick up things that you do.
Yeah, they need to know
things that you do.
The piggyback, the savings account,
so
all
I
of those
think
things.
so I think, and none of us is perfect. We all have, you know, like our weaknesses. But I think, you know, like when you're trying to train your child, think about this way. As a trainer, your kid will mostly pick up not necessarily what you say, but what you do. So if you have those things that you know have not worked so well for you that you've been doing, try to do them in a way that your kids are not seeing. Na si ati unajificha, ama you're just trying to give them a better shot.
Let me give an example. It's very true. Kids will not listen to what you say.
Yeah.
They'll watch what you do.
They'll watch what you do.
Which means that what you listen to,
absolutely,
what they know, that, let's say, for example, if you guys are driving, or if you're on your phone or whatever, if you're at home, whatever, if, let's say, or even when you're talking, like now, for example, and especially this habit, you know, some kids get smart enough, they start learning Swahili. They start learning Kikuyu. They start learning your mother tongue or whatever.
They pick it up, yes.
They pick it up. So then they will listen. So whenever, if you're talking politics, and then they will feel that energy. They will understand. Your kids will understand you pertaining to certain matters.
Yes.
Political, your affiliations.
All those things.
All those
they are a combination of all those things that you constantly do.
They will get that stuff. Trust me, they will pick up.
So you can't speak in your mother tongue to hide things?
Even
at some point, you
know how I know this? Within our extended family,
yes,
the people who smoke, kuvuta sigara, all of them, without a fail, had parents who are smoking. Like, it is so profound, like when we sit
habits
as cousins and we discuss, and now they're talking about not smoking in front of their kids, is, you know, like all the ones in our group who smoke, so their parents are doing it. Yes. And it's kind of like, how, I mean, was it just a coincidence?
And this goes back to
that's what shapes you.
But you see, this goes back to what sometimes, you know, like we were talking about, we've been discussing how sometimes we isolate our kids. We want them to be Kenyan. We want them to be Kikuyu, Luo, whatever, it doesn't matter. But we go out of our way to speak our mother tongue to isolate them.
Yeah, to put
if
them,
I don't want them,
yes,
if
put them aside,
put them aside. If I want to talk about, let's say, Ali and whatever,
that doesn't apply in our in our setup.
I was gonna say
no,
something
that's fine. That's
that
it
doesn't
doesn't
apply in our
apply.
setup.
No, you see, Ali, you
But
guys,
it's something that I've experienced.
I was
I've
gonna
seen,
say
and
something
I am culpable.
I am
culpable.
Just
I am
hang out
culpable.
with
I am
hata
guilty
hizi
as
mabasi
hell.
tulikuwa tunaenda hizi house party.
Yeah.
You would usually see when people have kids wanakuja na watoi wanapiga story. Mkitaka kwa sengenya toka nongea Kiswahili.
Yeah, but sasa,
Like, it's simple. It is just and I think what Uno is trying to say is that instead of teaching them things like hizo languages to
Yes.
continue them learning the language and the culture, tunakata kuwafundisha
Tuna
so that we can
isolate.
have a way to talk about them.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's all I'm saying. And
which is
this
not
Or
fair.
have discussions that they would not understand or be involved
and
in.
this goes
Yeah.
also now that add on to that, like if we really want to teach them finance, we want to teach, because like you know,
Go ahead.
Maura and Ali said, you can't teach them when they are 20.
No, that's
Oh, no.
late.
No,
That's
no.
that old dog
So you
that
start-
can't
you
be
start
taught.
Even
early.
15,
Correct.
16
No, no,
is
no.
already
No,
late.
he meanda.
Yeah.
That
He
we went
imeenda
a long time,
kabisa.
yeah.
Yeah.
You start at 8, you start at 9,
So-
you start at 7, 6.
By
So
8
the
you should
best
have been doing it.
So
You
the
should-
age
yes.
of
By 8
the
you should
ages
have
of
been doing it.
maximum influence are between 7 to 14.
No. By 9, you've already started. At 14, wameanza kumea pembe.
And
They're teenagers.
ndo nasema
He
maximum
said between
influence.
7 and you,
Of course, you
that's
have to
your
start
age.
early. You
The
have to
seed
start
has to be
before
planted.
7.
The
Yes,
seed has to
correct.
be planted so
Yeah.
early.
The seed has to be planted so
By
early.
8,
Like any-
if that child is getting to 10, your seeds have already planted. You've already
Yes.
planted those seeds and you're watering those seeds.
Yes, you have to determine those priorities.
Mapema ndio best.
Yes.
Walai bilai.
Agreed.
Yes.
Mapema ndio best, lakini pia we should also consider, like, we have parents who have who come to get with their children later in life, maybe because ulikuja huku umeacha mtoi Kenya,
That's a
it's taken
different
your years
situation.
to settle
yeah.
down ukwaleta huku. So we also have to consider, like, to consider and say, like, yes, mapema ndio best, but any chance you get, what you've learned,
Yes.
what you've get, it's best to share that knowledge and teach that knowledge.
Yes.
Especially if, let's say,
Yeah.
if let's say you're bringing somebody into this country, wako high school ama wanaingia college, you have to sit down and start teaching
And
that to them.
explain and also explain it. I think there's that thing of I'm your parent, I'm telling you, not not okay, this is the way the world is shaped, and based upon the pitfalls and the holes that I walked through, this is what my advice for you is. This is the path you should take. You should go down this way. Boom, 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 boom. Any support you need, I got you. I got your back. But if a lot of times as parents, because of the way we were shaped, by our parents, where it was basically an authoritarian rule where it's like, it's my way or the highway. Basically, if you're living in my house, it's my rules.
Yeah.
So that's how things were brought down to us, and we tend to either replicate that way or we go the total opposite, where we just let the child go and say, I don't want my child to be the way I was raised up, so I'll let them do whatever the heck they want. And then it becomes too late because you're back at that point where we're like, they're 20 and you can't shape. And you already see what's going to happen to them, So we really have to be very, we have to be very, I was going to say categorical, but maybe that's not the right word. You have to.
You have to be smart about it.
You have to,
You
okay,
have
you
to
have
be
to be smart.
cognizant
Yeah.
about it. You got to
you
understand.
really have to pinpoint, right? Go aim for it straight and don't beat around the bush.
And I
but
think-
explain, because these kids, you have to explain.
And
to
I
them
think you also have to
for them to get
understand.
an understanding.
Yes, I think you also have to understand what other influences are there on your kids outside the home. It's important to have an understanding of those,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
most parents sometimes either ignore or don't know, and sometimes you may not be in a position to know everything. This is where having like a village or as a community where parents can sit and discuss these things to help each other, which happens a lot sometimes when we are sitting like in mosques, for example. I don't know how the church setup is.
Same thing.
They talk about these things, like people. I know that's religious institutions are things that are being that people are not people are not quite taking them seriously, but they play a very important role in teaching parents. These are some of the influences that your kids are experiencing when they go to school, when they go to the neighborhood, because the influences are way more. The outside influences are way more than what outside influences we were getting growing up. Because now there's social media, which I think is way more potent than TV. Because TV was restricted, what shows are showing, what shows kids are watching. But with the internet, there are so many other things. And then there are so many things, like my nephews were telling me that drugs are a normal thing. They are a very normal thing in America. You went to an American
I was
school.
going to say, I have something to say, yeah.
Yeah, so you probably know that better than any of us. Me, the first time I was like, drugs, like I was
It's
completely
normal.
shocked.
Opioids,
And they were
drugs.
shocked at me being shocked.
Yeah.
When my nephews were telling me, they were shocked at me being shocked. They were like, Allah, Kwani, you didn't know? This is very normal. People come and sell this stuff in school. And those are the things that a lot of African parents,
They don't know.
they're oblivious.
And
They don't
vaping.
know.
So, you
By
know,
the way,
like-
vaping is
That's another
so
thing.
like being Kenyan American, right? Kenyan American, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say Kenyan American, right? So everybody, he makes fun of me because my Swa is awful, but my Kikuyu is ridiculous because of my mom. Only thing she talked to us is in Kuk since 1989.
I felt that.
yes,
I felt
because those
Right.
because the parents they were always
Right,
like
that
I'm only
influence that you
speaking to
guys are
that,
talking
Yes,
to, she
yeah.
never,
You see, you
she
have it
never,
for a lifetime.
and I've had it for a
For a
lifetime.
lifetime, yes.
Now they never talk to me in Swa, so that's why my Swa is awful.
Oh, okay.
We'll fix that. Don't worry about that.
Well,
yeah.
your Swa is
No,
different.
at a small fee. At a small
At
fee.
a small fee.
Yeah,
you
so,
share.
A commercial lending fee. A commercial
That's right,
lending
I got
fee.
you.
Yeah.
I got you. Have it. 50
But like I
bucks.
said, you can't redirect, a guy who's like 75 and try to teach him Swahili like, hey, mambo vipi kazi, whatever. It's a process.
Yeah, it's a process.
it
It's a
is.
process.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, so
Well,
you can pay.
and even the process is who you put yourself around, right?
Yes.
So I always say this, right? I'm extremely Kenyan during the summer. Find me in January, American, because we don't interact.
Got it. The
You know,
outdoor
like we're
activities.
not hanging out.
The Kenyans hang out outdoor activities.
Summertime,
around
correct.
Yam
I am
Chom,
a-
gathering.
I'm a
Got
beast.
it.
But in January,
Got it.
I'm as American can be,
Heather, Jake.
right?
Eating
Oh,
cheese
And Amber,
sandwiches.
don't forget Amber.
Amber.
Don't forget
As
about
apple
Amber.
pie.
Yeah.
As apple pie.
That's
Yeah.
why sometimes we don't take you places.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Dang.
So there's comments over here on
True.
YouTube. We are neglected them kidogo. Dennis Wasonga karibu, and he was talking about folks don't really plan for wills.
That shipper needs to
That's a good one. They're
sponsor
not-
on the show.
Yes.
They're not in Indianapolis. Yeah, that's a
Yes.
good.
Yeah,
that's
he's a
good.
guy. He's a guy of
That's a good
logistics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Sponsor the show.
Supply chain. Nini.
Yeah.
See you there.
Malize comment yake.
So Dennis,
More so my comment.
folks don't really plan for wills, trusts, under agreements, etc. They have employer-based life insurance, but don't leave any further instructions on what is to be done if they expire. This thing of expiration, wills, trusts, we are gonna come back to this in our
That's a
community.
whole subject. Like
That's a whole show.
That needs
That's
a whole show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everything that the IULs that we were just talking about go into that. Like that one, wills, trust, is a subject we can do for hours. So I'll leave it alone.
And then Wairimu ule wa asemani Coast ya Magharibi ama
Coast ya Magharibi.
ama
Oshio.
Okay.
Gaiveka wa coast.
She was saying decreasing interest rates when an economy is contracting leads to something similar to 2008 over leveraged consumers, but with no money to pay the debt. And then she commented again and said, Ali is right. Most Asians and Hispanic kids don't move out early. Some actually wait until they have their own families. So, that's community thing. And I think even with the Asians, I don't know if theirs, theirs literally, I have an accountant who's Asian. And so he is the accountant for their temple or whatever it is, right? And he does their stuff. But in his house, all his kids, even though some of them moved and went, they have their own houses, but at some point, he was telling me they had one bank account. Everybody, all the kids who are working of working age, they work out their money into one bank account. And I cannot imagine, it's like, okay, let's say you have 4 kids, they are grown, they are working, and they're living with you, and they've worked out all their money. How much money do you think is that account in 1 month?
Yeah, no.
And then they use that to leverage and do different things. And he's in business, and so it's very interesting.
I'll tell you guys one thing that is very controversial. Now, you see, Africans, we used to live in communities.
Correct.
That's how we used to live
Yes.
until we were convinced otherwise. we are copying, you know, like a system
And they're not callers.
from we are copying a system from what do you call it, from white people,
The Western world.
who from the Western world, who had a very different situation.
Yeah.
They had generations of free labor, generations of stolen resources. This wealth that you see today, and this is not me, this is just the reality.
It's facts.
Yeah, it's facts. You know, it's generational wealth based on a lot of pain, a lot of torture, and a lot of blood. And this is the wealth they have. So because of all this wealth they have, they can go into the little separate nuclear spaces and thrive. However, because we do not have the benefit of 400 years of stolen labor and another 100 years of colonialism, you know, because that's a lot of wealth.
It's
when
a
you
lot.
think about it,
It's
a lot of stolen wealth.
Man. It's a lot.
Because we don't have the benefit of that, and then now we start saying that we're gonna live into the system in which they want us to live, because it benefits them more. If the four of us, for example, let's say we are brothers, if the four of us live in one house, we can survive with 1 or 2 cars.
Correct.
But now because the four of us are living in 4 houses, we have 4 different cars, we have 4 different electric bills, we have 4 different water bills, and guess who owns the utility companies? Guess who owns those companies that are selling you the cars? Guess who owns all those things that you're consuming based on all of you being in separate spaces? Because I'm thinking of, you know, like a child who has moved out at age 23 and they've gone somewhere, they're paying $2,000 in rent. Guess who owns that building where she's paying rent? So that's money, that's wealth that's coming away from the family, that's going somewhere else. So I think we need to seriously rethink, because one of the argument that comes out, I need my privacy. You know, I need, but what is that? What is the cost you're getting out of getting that privacy? You know, because if you think of how much money you can save and invest over time, because think if it's 4 people and you're all paying $2,000, that's $8,000 a month. When you multiply $8,000 by 12, you're talking about almost $100,000 in a year, in 1 year. 100 grand, it's just gone.
Yeah.
Just like that. And it's building someone else's wealth who doesn't need it as much.
And I think sometimes it's something that you touched upon during colonialism. You know, after colonial, we were told to be separate.
Yes.
Right? Be
Yeah.
separate, right? And
Hiyo ndo maendeleo.
Sindio.
Yeah.
And everybody does their own thing. So, and we take that mentality, it's just me or die,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to live in an apartment with three roommates. I'm gonna go spend more so I can be by myself.
I can get my own space.
My own space,
Yeah.
as you said.
My own
space.
privacy.
Yeah,
My own privacy. But then the guy who's $1 million, the Dunkin' Donuts guy, is living with 8 people,
Yes.
and he owns 5 Dunkin' Donuts. He's making $2 million a clip.
So I think we need to think, we need to start moving very differently
And that
and
was
thinking very differently.
to support his point. Think about it when we were doing career, when we were in high school. Most guys, you know, it was interesting that, you know, when we were in high school, ama primo, kila mtu anajisomea. If I have a problem with a question pertaining to math or chemistry or physics or whatever, if I go to Ali, atambia, hey, you know what, me, I guess this I'm not sure. But sure enough, when the exam
so that
comes,
you don't beat me.
exactly. So when
Yeah.
the exam comes or whatever, atanichapa. But here, we understand, like even when we came to Kole over here, you know, it's not about everyone is put in groups. And each group has been given a task. Like you have to
Correct.
do, it's a project that you guys have to do everything.
Yes, you have to work
This
together.
is Kole.
Learn to work, you know, as a team.
Correct. Yeah.
And this doesn't start at Kole. Then you start, you know, like when you get kids, you know, you start seeing this thing from
Yeah.
when they're toys, like, you know what, you guys are a group. you're being given whatever. It's not about being number one. It's about collaborating. It's about linking up.
And
like
it's about teaching you about life.
Teaching
Not
about
everyone.
life.
It's not everything
not
that's
alone.
going to be 50-50.
Yes.
There's always going to be people who will put in just a bit of work and try to take credit.
And
so that's teaching you. That's how life is.
And that has handicapped us Kenyans of our age. You don't know about, and the problem is we don't know if we have instilled this in our kids.
Yeah.
Hatujui.
Yeah.
But I can say that when it comes to us, age group yetu,
Yeah.
I don't know about Kinamosh, but age group yetu,
So you see,
we are in a bad position where it's a struggle
it
to
is.
detach. It is
Yeah.
a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Ukisikia msee anajaribu kutafuta mbinu za kufanya kitu.
No,
It's
you
a
see,
problem.
The benefit that
I love you, my brother.
the benefit
Kamosh.
that
Backward comment.
the benefit that those of us who come from Muslim communities have is because you understand we Muslims do not move with the crowds. We have these systems that work, and whether you like it or not, you're told this is how you're supposed to live in brotherhood. So wherever the world is going, whether it's going this direction or that direction, so those values, even if they're not necessarily enforced, but they're things that are constantly being taught.
And at what age do you start being taught this?
Oh, very early.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way,
I'm going back.
like-
I'm always.
Yeah.
I will always go back to when we start instilling this in
Yeah.
our children.
Yeah, by the way, like I sometimes feel I went through, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I feel like I went through two different curriculums of education because when it comes to the Islamic education beyond the Quran, there's so many other things that we learn, and it's a very different kind of education from this Western style education that we went through, because it was totally opposite. Huku unafunzwa ubinafsi. In the Western style education, you're taught self-reliance
Selfless.
na nini. Huku kwingine tukienda madrasa unaambiwa
Umoja.
hapana,
Yes.
lazima muwe pamoja. If you're the one who's making money, you're the one who's supposed to be holding up the other people who are not making money. So it was a very different, like huku naambiwa hivi na huku naambiwa hivi, but I think in the long term, like I did see the benefits of it later on. And I think we as Africans have to start figuring the priorities within our education systems.
And I think, and I could be wrong, and it's still in this umbrella and context of the conversation we are having because of what is going on, because it's like we're being given a gut check, a reality check. Like,
Yes.
okay,
Facts.
like whatever DJT is doing, then you sort of have to start doing a self-assessment.
Absolutely.
Like in terms of like in Africa, in continent, we've had, Bandio posted a video clip of now the US talking about shutting down 30 embassies.
30 consulates, yeah.
30 consulates. Now, what does that mean then?
Yes.
Because what
In a very selfish way, we have to be self-independent. Right?
and that's the thing.
We have to learn to
learn
rely on ourselves.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And guess what?
Right?
Like when you
And-
look at the continent and all the resources that we have, it is possible for us to really rely on ourselves.
Now, you see, the thing is, the African continent, also when you go to the Middle East or any of these parts that the Europeans colonized, they made sure when they left, they built or created those places in their image. That is what they did. So what they did, they were very masterful in how they did this. So Africa, the modern borders that we see today were crafted in the Berlin Conference. I'm sure most
Yep.
of you learned about that
The Berlin Conference
in high school. And then the European, the Middle East borders were created using an agreement called Sykes-Picot agreement. So the people in the Middle East were affected in a different way, in the sense of their leadership. They still maintained most parts of their culture, but then in Africa, we, especially French West Africa, mostly like affected in a very severe way, by those by those systems
Franco-Frank
that are left
Yeah.
behind.
Yeah.
The Sahel is trying to divorce itself right now from that system. So I think we now need thinkers we need different kinds of people to start designing and thinking of what type of Africa we want moving forward.
So what are your thoughts about the president of Burkina Faso, the young general?
Yes, I mean, I love what Ibrahima Traore is doing, in the sense that, I mean, I don't have details of what he's technically doing, but people are very happy with him, like at least from what we're seeing.
So he took the biggest thing that he did in my eyes, right? He took the central banking system from France.
Yes.
Right.
So
and
that's a big deal.
That's a huge deal because it's a mining country. They do a lot of mining. They do a lot of oil. So there's a lot of deposits that go into it. And that, to me, makes a lot of sense, right? When you're taking the mining, that's where the money is, right? And now it's being sent, and hopefully he does the right thing, and he reinvests that money into the economy of Burkina Faso. But
so I think what the Sahel countries, it's not only Burkina Faso, I think a number of the Sahel countries are actually doing that. And they're divorcing themselves from countries that have Western puppets. Like Nigeria right now has a president who's basically a Western puppet. He's someone who had issues here in the U.S., had legal issues here in the U.S., but he's now, he's a president there. So I think we have to rethink the whole idea of it, even especially when we're going to educate our kids, because I think problematically we sometimes prioritize economic issues, like ataweza kupata kazi akimaliza skuli. So I know that's important. I know that's important, but there are some other things that are more important than that are being skipped. For example, ethics. Right now in Kenya, being unethical is totally accepted. People will vote for you. Yeah. If you're an honest guy, no one will vote for you. But if you've stolen, if you've killed, if you've raped, if you've done any kind of shenanigans, as long as you go and distribute, like 100 shillings to people in the villages, they will vote for you.
Yeah.
So I think the problem is
and they do it live. They show you.
Yeah, they show you. They do it live.
Right.
We used to have politicians who had values. Like if you go back to the 90s, even up to the 2000s, you had politicians who had values. Like the Muites, the Gitobui Manyaras, but these people could no longer win elections because they were honest and they had values. Now, you wanna win an election.
You have to be corrupt.
Yeah.
You have to be mother than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to be
be involved in very big scandals.
I do my best to stay away from politics because everybody's right? Because everybody's opinion is their opinion. Yeah. And their opinion only. So
but what happens when you stay away from politics? We get President Trump.
You ain't lying.
Yes, that's what I tell people.
Lying.
You stay away from politics. Yeah. So I think there's a sanitized, there's a clean way in which we can engage in politics. I think because politics has become so toxic, both in the US and back home, that people feel like.
But you can't